parties involved, the two Koreas, and two neutral nations, Switzerland and Sweden, who each have 6 soldiers at all times at the DMZ. So their role is to conduct inspections and patrols within the DMZ to monitor the military activities and ensure compliance to the armistice terms. So what does it mean for human rights? It's interesting because they have to monitor what happens at the DMZ. So they can ensure that the human rights violations that are perpetrated there are reported, ensuring transparency and accountability. And they also report on cross-border attacks and military provocations, which help. They also try to help ease the tensions and build trust, which in turn can help fostering peace and stability, and in turn can have a positive impact on human rights. And while I said Switzerland has to be very neutral in most cases, they still did condemn the human rights violations. As I said, though, they can't independent sections. They had to do it through the UN or the EU or the OECD. But they also participated in other ways by providing humanitarian aid. The Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation has been working with the Cooperation Office in Pyongyang actually since the 1990s, and they're actually focused more on trying to fight hunger and malnutrition in the North Korean population. As I said before, there's diplomatic engagement that helps to engage in dialogue concerning human rights concerns. And they also participate in international efforts. So they actively participated, for example, in the human rights sessions when they openly condemned human rights abuses and calling for accountability, transparency, and improvements. And the last thing is that they're host for many human rights discussions. So, for example, the Geneva Forum for Human Rights. So that's it for Switzerland's part. And now, very quickly, I believe a lot of you are familiar with the system, but for those who are not, there's a great importance also of the international mechanisms, and also mainly for the UN and the EU. So the first point I would like to bring up is that it is a very politically involved matter that can complexify the resolution of the question and also hinder sometimes the advancements on human rights discussions. But there's still like several international mechanisms and initiatives that have been put in place to try to address the human rights situation that have been mentioned before, but I'll quickly go over some of them. So first of all, we have the United Nations Human Rights Council, the UNHRC, and it is the agency within the UN that is responsible to address the human rights situation globally. And what's important with them is that the discussions involve many important stakeholders. So there's the member states, which are elected yearly and representing all the continents, but they also have non-member states, observers, and NGOs, which is why, for example, PS Corps was at the Human Rights Council this year. These discussions may lead to resolutions calling on specific actions, principles, or creation of mechanisms to try and investigate and monitor the question of concern. So, for example, Korea has had several sanctions imposed in response to their human rights abuses and also the nuclear activities. And the Council also elects a special rapporteur on North Korean human rights, and this person regularly reports on the human rights situation abuses in the country, and they also engage with the relevant stakeholders. They also have other linked mechanisms. So we have the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea. It is this year actually the 10th year anniversary of it, because it was established in 2013 by the UNHRC to investigate human rights abuses in North Korea. And the year after, they released a report documenting the widespread and systematic human rights violations, including torture, forced labor, political repression, and the report called for accountability. And they really tried to urge the international community to take action and show the urgency of the situation. We also have the UPR, so the Universal Periodic Review, which is a mechanism through which all the UN member states undergo a review of their own human rights records. And after this report is released, the member states can analyze it and propose recommendations on how it could be improved. This is important because it helps ensure accountability and transparency for all the member states in the UN. And for example, North Korea has released one, I think in 2014, which had shown that they had committed crimes against humanity and several other things that have been condemned. And also they released one in 2019, and the whole process of the UPR is still ongoing. And the last part is also the civil society and NGOs, which is a really important part, but that's something Julie will go about more in detail and in her presentation. And for the last part on the international role, we also have the European Union standpoint. So they've been taking active part in sanctioning North Korea, mainly regarding the human rights and security concerns. They've also opened the dialogue with the North Korean government to try to encourage reforms in the respect of human rights, civil and political rights, freedom of expression, and so on. And they've also actively supported the UN sanctions, and they're part of this UI on North Korea. So, to conclude, I believe, as I said before, that the North Korean issue, despite its urgency, is really being overshadowed by other global concerns, and it's a very long-standing issue. As I said, at least this is very true for Switzerland. But it's really important to understand like the urgency of the situation, especially for the people. So, like for example, the core work of an NGO like PS4 is to try to find ways to spread awareness effectively and durably, but it's a true challenge. People have to be receptive to the message, so I don't have a solution. I'm just stating facts, but I know it's very true for Switzerland. But as I said, since the problem is so highly politicized, I believe the key to really helping the situation is the civil society and the NGOs, so the people who try to actively advocate. So I hope that the question of human rights will be more known. So it's our role to continue to spread awareness and be put higher than currently the nuclear program. But yeah, that's a really difficult issue that we could perhaps discuss later. And last point concerning Switzerland, I really hope that the country's neutrality will also maybe help the country be an important actor in trying to solve the North Korean human rights issue. This again, as it's very politically involved, is still a challenge, but I do believe they can have a very important role in the question. So yeah, thank you very much for your attention.